A number of years ago, I was in a group setting with a couple people I'd known since high school. And one of them had brought up that there was a girl that he had had a crush on, and that she was in France right now and she was a fashion model or something like that. Now, one of the other so called friends in the group, very rudely, without any hesitation, says, "Oh, you couldn't afford her lifestyle." Essentially saying that you're not good enough. You cannot afford her. You cannot afford to date her. Saying that he doesn't have a shot with this girl. Now, of course, I took issue with that comment. I remember I had taken my buddy to the side and said, "Hey, dude, do you want me to say something about this? Because I don't like that. I didn't like that comment. Trying to knock you down a peg." And again, it goes to show just how fake a lot of people are nowadays. They don't have the best interests of the people around them. And it's sad to say this, but unfortunately, a lot of these friend circles, social circles, are really just a bunch of people trying to one up each other, trying to compete with one another, trying to knock each other down a peg, and just flaunt their egos. That's what it is. Like this perfect example. Now, this friend who had made the rude comment was actually doing well for himself financially, which I am happy for. I'm happy for him doing well financially and being in the position that he was in, which is sadly something that a lot of these friends nowadays won't say. They won't be happy for the success of the people around them. You got to get rid of those people. You got to cut off those kind of negative people. Anyone who makes you feel like you're a lesser version of yourself or you're always drained hanging out with, just cut them off. But to my bigger point of this video, whatever he meant by that, whatever he implied by saying you could not afford her, like if he's talking about that he couldn't afford the designer clothing or taking her out to whatever he meant by that, I want to make a point here because women who want to live this luxurious lifestyle, men who want to push this kind of stuff, the only luxury that you have in life is your health. That is the biggest luxury you have. If something happens to your health, Dolce & Gabbana is not going to come save you. Cartier is not going to come save you. That's something that I think a lot of women now especially do not understand. They're so focused on this kind of image that they don't realize that this kind of material stuff goes away. And I think it's good. I think it's good to have. If you're happy with it, if it's within your means, I'm glad. I'm happy for you. But don't try to drag the other people down around you who either don't have those means or because you don't want to see them succeed. And even the lifestyle of a lot of women I see nowadays, or a lot of them, women I've even seen in their 40s who are going to nightclubs and raves, taking selfies with the tongue out. And over here in Seattle, we have a septum ring utopia. But a lot of women wanting to live this kind of lifestyle. And of course, wondering why they're not married at that age. No man, no self-respecting man is going to take a woman seriously like that who goes to places like that. But even with the whole nightlife thing, if we're going to talk about what people can and cannot afford, the prices of some of these tables are absolutely ridiculous. When I was in my early 20s, I had gone a couple times with some people and just getting a table, ridiculous prices. The drinks and stuff there, ridiculous prices. These are not things that men are going to want to play a part in, just to have some image of one night, to act like you're something. And in the city I'm in, which I can really only speak for the city I'm in because I've lived here my whole life, but I've heard kind of a similar trend with a lot of people I've talked to or seen in videos. But the cost of living here, if we're going to talk about affordability, is absolutely ridiculous. The housing prices in Seattle, an aunt of mine who used to live here, she was a doctor, and she had sold her house in 2017 for $700,000, which even to this day is still an expensive home if you look at the national average and stuff like that. But that house now, just out of curiosity, we looked it up, is worth almost $2 million. So even in a little bit less than 10 years, it's gone up triple. It's gone up triple. The price of groceries here being ridiculous. A lot of men struggling right now, and that's the problem. That's why I get so annoyed with stuff like this, like I mentioned in the beginning, because you have that, and then you have people who are going to want to be rude and going to want to be condescending and going to want to make it seem like you are not good enough or you are subpar. I'm tired of it. A big problem I see too is, like I mentioned, with this friend who made the comment having a good job. Like I mentioned, I'm happy for people who go to those positions. That I've known a lot of people who are dentists, who are doctors, who are lawyers, who are engineers, but they're also humble. They don't try to act like they're some big shot. Try to act like they're better than everyone else around them. You can talk to them and they're respectful. But I've also seen what I really think it is character flaws exacerbated, being brought out by these positions. But people who think because they have the job status, that they are now better than the people around them. It's really insecurity being brought out by those positions. But people now thinking they're better than the people around them, and then wanting to make these kind of statements. This friend, if it's not obvious, not someone I talk to anymore, someone that I did cut off for stuff like that. Another thing, this guy would always engage in, like gossiping, throwing people under the bus. Not things that a friend would do, but things that are sadly very common nowadays among men. But even with the living here, the cost of living here, the living situation here, when I would do DoorDash orders, there was something where they're called red card orders, where they would basically preload a debit card and you would go around a grocery store and do shopping for them. Now, I don't usually go to your run-of-the-mill grocery stores, like I mentioned, because of pricing. We have a few grocery outlets in Winco in the area. But the tally on some of these groceries was absolutely ridiculous. Barely anything. I don't know how long this food would last them, especially if they have families. $80, $100 for barely anything. There's a lot of people who are struggling right now. The last thing they need is someone to be rude and condescending. The last thing they need is this kind of nonsense in the dating market. When it comes to even this whole term of average men, whatever that even means nowadays, which I personally take problem with because it's coming from women who I would argue are not average, who I would argue are below average in many cases. Women I see getting ridiculous cosmetic procedures, ruining their beauty, first of all. Wearing ridiculous amounts of makeup, thinking that they're better than the men around them, thinking that they're entitled to something that does not even exist. The man they imagine doesn't exist, quite frankly, and even if they had that, they think that they can do better. And I saw this over the past few years, especially when social media and dating apps became such a forefront of people's lives. Just this delusional sense of entitlement and thinking that that you could always do better, that the grass is always greener. A lot of these same women, because I guess it's a fairly new thing, but you're starting to see it already, the remnants of it. Give it a few years' time. Those are the same women. They're going to reach a certain age, whether it's 30, whether it's 35, whether it's 40, whether it's even sooner, that are going to be wondering where the good men are at. When in reality, the good men are the ones who wanted to date you when you were in your 20s, that you rejected, that you thought you were above, that you thought you were better than, that you thought you were using for validation and attention. That's where the good men are. The good men have moved on. That ship has sailed. People worried more about this image than even any form of respect or decency or building something. Women wanting to create their social media profiles. When I used to use dating apps, there'd be women literally just linking their Instagram accounts, just wanting a follow. And sadly, very sadly, you have a lot of men who are playing part in this kind of stuff. Even men who are struggling financially that I've known. Buying women stuff on their online wish list, going to these kind of barista stands and tipping ridiculous amounts of money thinking you're going to buy their love. Have some self-respect. That's what the problem is. I don't even care, because the more I even think about it, women like that are really a lost cause when it comes to their mindset, truthfully. But when I see men who are putting themselves in financial ruin for things like that to try to impress women, I'm going to speak out on it. And even with the living stuff, I've known many people who at 18, they want to be right out of the house. They want to get their own apartment strictly for women because they want to have a girlfriend over. I think they can't do it with their parents or whatever it might be at that age. Which, the way I feel about living with your parents is, if it's within your means to live on your own and that's what you want to do, go for it. But don't feel some pressure by the people around you or whoever it might be that you need to do that. And if anyone's going to shame you for living with your parents or not living on your own, regardless of what age you are, especially if you're 18, 19, 20, 21, those are not your friends to begin with. Those are not people that you should care, especially a woman like that. You shouldn't care what she thinks, because it shows, well, that to me shows that she doesn't respect the foundation of what a family is even to begin with. So she's definitely not a woman that you'd ever be able to have a family with. And at the same point, I understand that family can also be hard. I understand there are cases where parents can be toxic. I understand that, of course, no parent is perfect. But the reality is you're not going to have your parents forever. Statistically speaking, there's a high likelihood that, especially at that age, that any relationship you have with a girl is not going to last long term. Whereas if something happens to your parents, you're not going to be able to replace them. So I think if you have the opportunity, especially in this city, to save your money, to really just focus on something, whether it's going to college, whether it's finding a job, whether it's getting into a trade, and you don't have to worry about that burden of paying rent by a certain amount of time, and sure, of course, still help your parents if you're with them, especially if they're elderly. But take that opportunity. Don't put yourself in financial, like I've seen so many people do, putting themselves in financial ruin just to impress women. I've seen that a lot. So if we're going to talk about what men can and cannot afford, like this bro, so-called, very rudely said, men can't afford the nonsense. They don't have time for the games anymore. They just don't. They really just don't. And even with how superficial things have gotten, I was talking to someone who is actually in his 80s, and he made a very interesting point. He said when he was younger, I can't remember exactly how the saying goes, but I think it is a fairly known saying, that women are attracted to what they hear, and what men are, I guess, attracted to what they see, right? Where nowadays, it's like women are more superficial, materialistic than ever before. You could have a man who is respectable, who has a story, who has persevered in life. A lot of women are not going to be interested in that because they want this image. They want this social media image of what they see on there. These people are miserable. They're miserable. And I'll be upfront in saying this too. I've been noticing, and it goes to show, women aging faster than in previous generations. I remember I was watching, I think it was Terminator 3, and the girl who plays, I think, the TX in that movie. And of course you can say, oh, well, she's a celebrity, she's an actress, but that's besides the point. Women, even in their 20s, even in their later 20s, used to still look youthful. I'm seeing women now, 23, 24, that don't look youthful anymore. They don't. And it goes to show with just how miserable they are living in their own head, the stressors and stuff like that. Of course, us as men, we have stress. A man's life is generally not easy, but part of being a man is persevering. That really goes to show the kind of, really the perseverance that a lot of men have, that they're able to keep their head up and persevere through these kind of things, have kind of this resolute kind of behavior characteristics. But I don't think a lot of women really are prepared or understand that kind of lifestyle. They don't. Being so caught up with making this kind of online image, and then that's what you're dependent on for your sense of confidence, is not going to lead anywhere good. Because like I said, that's going to go away eventually. The wall is real. They're going to hit that wall eventually. And like I mentioned, it seems like it's now sooner than ever before. And what are you going to have when that happens? Because you're not going to be getting the attention like you used to before. You're not going to be getting the dating app matches like you used to before. Are you going to just fall into being by yourself? That's what I think. But we're at a position, guys, where men need to be humble amongst one another, women especially, but these so-called friends need to really just be more uplifting, if anything, or just don't say anything at all. If you're going to make a comment like that or think something like that, just don't say it. Don't say it. These kind of traits are just way too common. Way, way too common. And before I end the video, I want to tell you guys a quick story. Just kind of going into this whole thing, this idea of afford and the point of the beginning. I was at a gas station a while back, and I had some leftover food. It was a clean slice of pizza from a restaurant that I had taken home. And there was a guy who was asking for food, and I actually given him the pizza. I remember he had asked me, he said, Oh, but are you gonna have any food for yourself? Now, I was someone who had a car, who was getting gas. He was someone who was asking for food. And what it went to show was what this man lacked financially, what he didn't have in abundance in, money-wise, he had in something that a lot of people lack nowadays, that a lot of people are bankrupt in nowadays, which is character, decency, respect. You don't see that enough. You just don't. You just don't. Among dating, among friends, you just don't. And that was really eye-opening. That was very eye-opening to see that. And, people being so worried about this kind of stuff, people making comments like that, just cut them off. Don't play part in this game. Don't be the court jester. Don't play part in this game with impressing women and want to live this flashy lifestyle. Like even, when I was in high school, the fashion trends were pretty strange. If you guys remember people wearing like Gucci belts, retro Jordans, all this kind of stuff. But people just spending all their money to try to create this image, right? Whereas it shouldn't be just about what's on the outside. It really shouldn't. And again, I'm someone who's for dressing good and going to the gym. I'm someone who's for that. But there's been this lack of appreciation for the person, for who they are. And I think it's why a lot of people seemingly might lack personality nowadays, as I've heard people say. But yeah, it's just gone way out of control. Ultimately, what we can afford to do is focus on our mission and purpose and our peace and solitude. That's what we can afford. So, as always, guys, I appreciate you viewing the video. Thank you so much. Hope you guys have a good one.